The 5th year of following that roguish rich young man around, I was photographed in what looked like a pregnancy shot. In no time, rumors were flying around the circle, and everyone thought I was going to use the child to force my way up and marry into a wealthy family. The white moonlight who had been sulking for years heard the news and rushed back to the country. I thought a bloody, earth-shaking battle was about to break out, but when Lou Heron came back from a business trip, all he heard was that I had aborted the baby and sneaked back to my hometown. Sigh, for girls like us who always behave ourselves, we can do whatever we want on ordinary days, but if you really end up pregnant with a child who has no status, your parents will beat you to death. In the dead of night, just after I hung up on the doctor, the doorbell in the living room rang. I closed the suitcase and turned to open the door. The man was wearing a leather jacket with an icy feel to it. He lifted his hand and tossed the hefty sports car key into my arms, looking displeased as he said, "Why did you change the front door code?" I pursed my lips and said softly, "I was afraid obsessive fans would come and camp out at my doorstep." He let out a contemptuous snort. With the security in this complex, not even a cat can get in without being registered, let alone a living person. Still, someone could get in, I thought to myself silently. For example, your first love has been here before, and even kicked my door in. I took his coat and stood on tiptoe to hang it up. Besides the familiar scent of fur, there was also a trace of sweet, cloying women's perfume. It was exactly the same smell as the uninvited guest from yesterday. I pretended not to notice it. He suddenly reached out and brushed the corner of my eye with his knuckles. Cried. I froze for a moment, not expecting him to have noticed my slightly swollen eyes. I casually made up an excuse, watched a movie, seeing my long lashes lower. His gaze followed, and he noticed my bare feet. The chill of autumn was growing stronger, but the carpet still hadn't been laid down. He frowned slightly, lifted me into his arms, and carried me to the sofa with his hand under my buttocks. He probably thought I had been swayed by the recent rumors, so he said, "People in these circles love gossiping. If getting pregnant really meant marrying into a wealthy family, those women who've been eagerly waiting for a chance would have already rushed to me. I have other use for this child. Be good, and don't learn from those fools who dream of climbing the social ladder." The position of Mrs. Lou isn't that easy to get. Those words were both a warning and a reminder. He had plenty of women around him over the years, but as for fun, he was never careless when it came to anything involving the family's interests. The moment I dared to think like the other women in those circles and try to gain something through a child, he could take back everything at any moment and return me to who I was at the beginning. I was a little tired, and leaning against his shoulder, I softly gave Suddenly, his gaze paused slightly as he noticed the suitcase I had laid out on the floor. "Going back to your hometown again?" He frowned almost imperceptibly. My parents said they miss me. Over the years, whenever I was wronged, I would run back home. One moment I'd say I never wanted to come back, and the next I'd secretly buy the earliest flight back, because I missed him too much. Thinking that Mid-Autumn Festival was coming up in a while, he didn't mind it either. "Since you're going back, stay a couple more days, avoid dealing with those people with crooked intentions, and we can talk about the child later." He didn't bring up that white moonlight who had returned to the country. I was tactful enough not to ask either. Too, I fell for Lou Heron at first sight. If you ask me whether it was more about liking him, or more about the benefits, it had to be physical attraction. As a good girl who had grown up being disciplined by rigid rules since childhood, I followed the path my parents had arranged for me through every stage of life, including applying to a normal university, choosing a literature-related major, and returning to my alma mater to work after graduation. My long-delayed rebellion erupted in my first year on the job. I saw my own foreseeable future in the eyes of the teachers I worked with: teaching, blind dates, marriage, having children. On a sweltering yet bland summer afternoon, I stared for a long time at the lesson plan before me and the bouquet of roses on my desk, sent by a new male teacher. Since I was young, I had known that I was born with a pretty, well-behaved face. There were countless boys who showed me favor, so many that it made me feel like I was an easy product to take off the shelf. It was annoying, and also very frustrating. Of course, among them were sincere boys, but their shy blushes and nervous stammering always left me uninterested. I wanted to tear off the label on me. I wanted to become the center of attention, beyond anyone's reach. That unrealistic desire kept getting pushed down, then surfacing again, pushed down again, then surfacing again. It was not until a friend who was an agent asked me whether I was interested in taking part in their talent show. That was probably the most rebellious thing I had ever done in my life. I quit my job, cut off my heavy bangs, and went back to Kyoto. Everyone said the entertainment industry was a hard road to walk, but I was young then, and after standing out in the talent show, I thought I was a star destined by heaven, and I was filled with passion for the road ahead. It was not until 6 months later that I kept hitting walls, faced contract termination from the company, had no roles to play, and was even harassed by a producer. The man lecherously promised that if I stayed with him, he would definitely make me famous. I looked at his bald forehead and quietly looked away. Actually, it's not like it absolutely has to be red. At the very least, I can't stomach this one. I had thought my acting career, which had barely even begun, was about to be buried right there and then, but instead I met Lou Heron in a private room packed with little-known minor celebrities and directors. That roguish young rich guy was sitting in the seat of honor. His voice was teasing. His lips curved lazily, a cigarette between his long, well-defined fingers, and the expensive watch on his wrist glinted in the scattered light and shadow. He was simply a sight for sore eyes. Just one glance, and I was lost. There's nothing we can do about it. We good girls just can't resist a cocky, roguish bad boy. Not to mention he even singled me out and pursued me so publicly and dramatically. He openly admitted in front of all the media that I was his little girlfriend. You can imagine, on a sultry late-night breeze, a lazy, handsome young man leans against his 10 million yuan red convertible sports car. One hand in his pocket, with a huge bouquet of delicate, fragrant red roses on the passenger seat, smiling at you across the crowd with a slight curl of his lips. It was enough to drive me crazy. He was someone I had never come into contact with in my dull and uneventful first half of life. It was also the first time I heard the pounding of my own heart. My best friend was endlessly tolerant of me. When it came to this unequal relationship, she said seriously, "What's the big deal, for a good girl like you? Only after you've played around enough with the wild ones can you settle down and marry a proper man, a rich young man like Lou Heron. Even a little that slips through his fingers would be enough for you to live on for the rest of your life. Honestly, while he's still not tired of you, you should take the chance to get as much out of him as you can." I agreed with her completely, so I willingly sank into the tenderness he had woven for me. Lou Heron was generous and never sparing with gifts. Knowing I wanted to act, he even personally brought scripts to me and let me choose. Because of him, all the difficulties on set disappeared. The road to the Golden Rooster Awards became incredibly smooth. All I needed was to keep honing my acting skills. If it weren't for his first love coming back, maybe I would have lingered by his side for another 2 years, hoping to win that highest honor. 3. I had long heard of this Chinese actress, who had spent years struggling in Hollywood before finally starting to make a name for herself. When one of Lou Heron's close friends met me for the first time, he compared me to her. "She's pretty enough, but far too soft-tempered. There's no way she can compare to Shenlan's fiery spirit." That was the first time I learned the name Shenlan, the name of the woman Lou Heron had loved to the point of heartbreak, and later hated to the very bone. To put it bluntly, the reason his lofty, high-end mighty friends could tolerate a minor nobody like me. He simply felt that Shenlan had hurt him far too deeply back then. Everyone in the circle thought someone should stay with him and help him get over it. A stunning, dazzling female star came to my home with bodyguards, smashed my door, broke my vase, and, right in front of me, threw my kitten out the window. The kitten's shrill, heart-rending cries made me tremble all over. Tears kept falling, yet I couldn't even force out a single complete harsh word. She clapped her hands unhurriedly, then looked me up and down with a pitiful expression and said, "I thought anyone who could make Lou Heron willingly keep her for 5 years must be quite a schemer. I never expected you to be such a pushover." Then again, a pet with no temper, who wouldn't be willing to keep it a few extra years. After all, there's no need to spend any effort coaxing it. My whole body was shaking, and even my rosy lips had been bitten until they bled. Trespassing, damaging property, and animal abuse, any one of these, if reported to the police and spread, could ruin her in minutes. Bodyguards were blocking the entrance to my home. She seemed to have seen right through my thoughts and simply stepped aside to make way for me, saying in an overbearing tone, "Go on then, the police station is 200 meters to the right as soon as you walk out. Feel free to go now and see whose name ends up trending." She was so brazen because she clearly had backing, and that backing probably came from Lou Heron, but I didn't think she was in the right. "As far as I know, you and Mr. Lou aren't even exes. May I ask what right you have to barge in here?" "Right?" She sounded as if she had heard a joke, curling her lips in mockery. "Back then, on a rainy night, he raced on the elevated highway just to chase after me and almost lost half his life. Tell me, what right would I need? Do you know why he's being so high profile about keeping you by his side? It's nothing more than putting on a show for me, just to Force me to back down, she sneered lightly, with clear disdain. You actually think he really likes obedient women? I clenched my fingers tightly and forced out a cold laugh like hers. But I'm carrying his child. Do you think he'd just ignore that? Hearing this, Shenlong couldn't help but laugh. You don't actually think you can control him just by having a child, do you? Her voice was very soft, her gaze dropping to my slightly protruding belly. Before I came back to the country, he called me and said that as long as I was willing to back down, he could have this child aborted. I watched the color drain from my face rapidly, the curve at the corner of her lips deepened, and she said casually, but what if I don't back down, Miss Jiang? Tell me, if next time my bodyguards are a little rough, or I accidentally bump into you, will Heron blame me for being out of line? Or will he blame the child in your belly for being too much of an eyesore? The setting sun shone in through the window. The sky was filled with rosy clouds, reflecting the certainty of victory in her eyes. My blood froze in my veins, as if I had lost my voice. I couldn't say a single word. She carried herself with a confidence that was almost commanding. That was something I would never have even after being by Lu Heron's side for so long. I had never managed to figure out my true place in his heart, just like when we first met. His gaze wasn't on me, but on a little star who looked a lot like Shenlong. As for why he later chose me, maybe he simply wanted to use my gentle obedience to prove that he would no longer be attached to that fiery white moonlight. Since he only wants a child, then anyone would do, so why should I wade into this mess for? But if you ask whether Lu Heron truly had no feelings for me at all over those 5 years, I can only say, I don't know. He only looks carefree and dissolute, flirtatious with everyone. But in fact he doesn't really take many things to heart, just like all the holiday gifts he gave me were bought by his assistant, and the restaurants for our dates were always chosen at random. But whenever I ran into some trouble on set, he didn't mind personally stepping in to back me up. During the 5 years I stayed by his side, he also spent heavily several times to tailor a female-led drama just for me. He even brought in an award-winning actor for the supporting role. With a top-tier director at the helm, seemingly showered with endless affection, yet he never once considered that someone like me was not suited to be a female lead. So every drama I starred in flopped. It got so bad that people in the industry found it utterly baffling. Once, I even won the Golden Broom Award, and after a few jabs from a rising actress of the same generation about my bad acting, I was so upset I cried in his arms all night. Back then, perhaps he was raising me as if I were Shenlong, but in this one respect, I was the least like Shenlong. He probably found it amusing at the time. There was even a hint of teasing interest in his eyes. Indeed, pretty bad, not even as genuine as when you cry in bed. Over all these years, I was probably the first investment project of his that was guaranteed to lose money. He had had a little to drink at the time, maybe because he was in a good mood, or maybe because he simply didn't care. He then pinched my cheek with great amusement, and in front of me he called the organizer, giving that little Xiaohua a Golden Broom Award too. It sounded childish, but people are always moved by such childish little things, just like I could agree to have a child with him. Clearly, he was the one who got drunk that evening, but I was the one who was bewitched into agreeing. 5. At the time, his father was critically ill, and the children from each branch of the family were all busy sealing off the news and fighting over the family fortune. As the youngest and most favored son, he was naturally targeted everywhere he went. For about a few months, he never came looking for me. During that time, a big shot in the industry thought I'd been dumped and started putting his hands on me, asking if I wanted to be with him. I turned him down again and again, as politely as I could, yet I still managed to upset him. After one dinner gathering, he flew into a rage and cornered me in the hallway, tearing off half my dress. Fortunately, my agent rushed over in time and stopped the farce. From then on, people on set kept tripping me up, and even the wire rigging went wrong again and again, until the news reached Lu Heron's ears. He specially made time to come to the set and pick me up after work. On an evening when the sky was ablaze with sunset, a black Maybach appeared abruptly and silently outside the film set. As soon as I got in the car, I smelled a strong scent of alcohol. It was vodka. He must have drunk quite a bit. A large patch of alluring red had spread across his neck, his collar was loosely open, and that eye-catching flush had spread to his cold, pale chest, more intense than the sunset glow. You've lost weight. He pulled me into his arms, his long fingers kneading the soft flesh at my waist, his languid voice hiding exhaustion. No one's watching you, so you're not eating properly, are you? My nose stung, and my voice was soft and gentle. No, it's just that the new role requires me to be a little slimmer. He held me like that for a while, then said, Lao Wen will take you to and from work these next few days. Call him any time if anything comes up. Lao Wen was his personal chauffeur. For those with impure intentions, this was a kind of veiled warning. I sniffled and said, okay. In fact, it wasn't just me who had lost weight, he had too, quite a bit. It was probably the first time in so many years that I had seen him so gloomy and worn out. So when he spoke up and said he wanted a child, I stood there, stunned for a long time. This wasn't the first time he had brought up the matter of children, but the previous 2 times, he had smiled lazily and said he thought it was boring, that he wanted to raise a child just for fun, but this time, he did not smile. There is always plenty of strife in wealthy families. If something hadn't happened, he might not have been so eager to have a child. Okay, baby, he said, ruffling my hair, the smell of alcohol still lingering on his breath. Let's have a child of our own. Just a child. People always have to pay some price for the smooth road they travel. That was the excuse I made for myself. I gently rested my forehead against his, my long lashes trembling. Meeting his gaze, I answered softly yet earnestly, okay, I said, I'll bear you a child. 6. This child has cost me dearly. After rumors of my pregnancy spread, my endorsement deals were pulled one after another, the role I had lined up was snatched away, and my social media was overrun by bot armies. I had always been nothing more than a moderately popular actor. But suddenly a flood of dirt on me started surfacing. They said my acting was bad, that I got roles because of connections, that I was unprofessional, and that I acted like a diva. Worse still, some even said I was a mistress, interfering in someone else's relationship. My prenatal checkup records were inexplicably leaked. Headlines like, "A scheming little mistress uses every trick to climb the ladder, getting pregnant before marriage to pressure the young heir," and "The first love leaves the country." While the mistress is deeply calculating shot to the top of the trending list, it's hard to tell whose handiwork it was. For several nights, I had nightmares that I was pushed down by a woman, and there was a great deal of blood on the ground. When I woke up in the middle of the night, my forehead and palms were covered in cold sweat, but I didn't think too much about it. I only felt that it would be best to give birth to this child as soon as possible. This went on for 4 months until today, when I met Shenlong. What truly made me decide to terminate the pregnancy was the last thing she said before leaving. If Lu Heron wants to consolidate his position, what he needs to do is bring back a legitimate Lu family heir, as well as a wife from a prominent family who can bring him support from her own family. And Miss Jiang probably doesn't know that when I was 14, I had an accident and my uterus was removed, so I'll never be able to have children, so it was obvious who this child was meant for. She stopped just short of saying it outright, and taunted, "But you know, I've always been extremely proud. I can't tolerate someone else's child, even if it really were born. I have 100 ways to make it an accident. Miss Jiang, you should know how to choose." She turned and left with her imposing entourage of bodyguards, seemingly handing the choice over to me, but every word she said was really a threat. The orange-red sunset burned intensely like blood. I stood alone in the living room, which was full of wreckage. For a long time, the soreness in my eyes gradually welled up, my fingers curled slightly, and then tears suddenly fell. The wall clock ticked away in increments, the light and shadows of the setting sun slowly shifting, stretching out the lonely hours endlessly. Over the years I spent by Lu Heron's side, I had many moments of waiting alone. He had always done things however he pleased. One moment he'd say he was coming to stay the night, and the next he'd be off to a bar with his buddies. Outsiders said he was a flirt and a romantic. Probably because in those situations there would be girls throwing themselves at him, and he wouldn't mind opening a bottle of champagne for them amid the cheers, or even sharing a kiss with them. Occasionally, I would stumble upon scenes like these. The people around us would joke and ask whether I wanted to change boyfriends. Lu Heron would then lazily tell them to stop corrupting me, before letting go of the girl in his arms and drawing me into them instead. Their teasing gazes were too much, so I would blush and bury myself in his chest. He rested his head on top of mine, gently rubbing against my hair, and sighed in satisfaction. Good girl. Later, after it happened many times, he would also bite my earlobe and ask casually, "How come you never make a fuss? Aren't you jealous?" I looked at the chaotic play of light and shadow in the private room, unable to figure out how to answer for quite a while. Why didn't I make a fuss? Because I was confident in my own charm? Or because I was clear-headed enough to know there would be no result? Or maybe, because I hadn't had enough fun yet. Most girls would make a fuss and get some compensation, then turn around and rush off to the next life of indulgence and extravagance. But I was different. I want to enjoy a couple more years by his side, so I never make a fuss. Apart from having quite a few ambiguous girls around him, he has been exceptionally good to me. Because I said, "Why aren't there any fireworks During the new year, the night sky over Victoria Harbour was lit with fireworks for an entire night. Because I showed a bit more fondness for a piece of jewelry, he raised the bid to 10 million to buy it for me, and personally put it on me in front of everyone. Because I wanted to see the snowy scenery, he chartered the entire private cable car route at a ski resort in the Swiss Alps. I have passionately kissed him on the streets of Paris, learned wine tasting with him at a private estate in Italy, and driven his red Ferrari for a late-night spin through the city streets. Behind all these scenes lies a level of wealth that is hard for ordinary people to imagine. Having had these experiences, I feel quite content. 7. When I actually started packing my bags, I surprisingly didn't feel much reluctance in my heart. People change. The thoughts at 23 and 28 are always different. Kyoto is nice, but Jiangqing is home. If Lou Heron had been a bit more attentive, perhaps he would have noticed the vase I liked the most, which was originally placed in the entryway, was already gone. The usually clingy little cat was wrapped in bandages, listlessly licking its fur in the nest, while on my ankle there was a very shallow cut from broken porcelain. But he noticed nothing, and after dinner he went into the study to deal with his work. He's going to the United States tomorrow to verify the equity, and to deal with several illegitimate children while he's at it. It will probably be quite a while before he comes back. This also just gave me time to have an abortion and leave. I walked around the entire house, and most of the wardrobe was filled with luxury bags and jewelry. Even if I brought them back to Jiangqing, they would be of no use. Just as I was about to close the wardrobe, a diamond-studded ring fell out. It was something Lou Heron had specifically bid on at last year's auction to irritate some rival's wife, then given to me. It was originally supposed to be a matching set for both men and women, but he threw away the men's version. He probably meant for me. Not to flatter myself, I found the original velvet box to put it back in, then found a postcard and wanted to write something for these 5 years, but after thinking it over and over, I still couldn't come up with anything to write. It was nothing more than a performance we both willingly played along with. Just as I was about to sink in too deep, I even felt a little grateful that Shenlong had pulled me out. Resting my chin in my hand, I daydreamed as I wrote, and the fountain pen left ink spots at every pause in the sentences. Lou Heron, thank you for taking care of me these past 5 years. I really like Kyoto. It's always so lively here, but I also often feel lonely. I miss home very much, and I also want to settle down. My parents are getting old. They can't do without me. Don't blame me. Lou Heron. I basically just wrote whatever came to mind. At the end, I left a sentence. I hope you get what you wish for. Happy wedding. 8. By the time I closed the pen, it was already midnight. Lou Heron had just finished showering and came out. Seeing me tossing and turning in bed, he reached out and pulled the blanket off me, exposing my head to meet his gaze. Can't sleep. I pressed my lips together and said softly, a little, because I'm not by your side. He raised an eyebrow slightly and bent down to meet my gaze. I hesitated for a moment, but in the end, I still nodded out of habit. Actually, I was just thinking about whether to change the flight ticket for the day I left. Although the doctor said I could be discharged the same day after general anesthesia surgery, I didn't know if I could manage on my own. It seemed I had always been used to relying on others. Before, it was my parents. Later, it was Lou Heron. The man curled his lips slightly, revealing an expression that said, as expected, so delicate. He scoffed disdainfully. The man lifted the blanket and lay down. His black silk robe fell slightly open, revealing a few ambiguous marks on his chest. They were likely left by a woman's long fingernails, not mine. I never dared to dig my nails in that hard. Though his words were dismissive, his actions clearly showed he enjoyed it. As he lay down, he pulled me closer into his embrace. I stared at the ceiling for a while, then suddenly turned over and asked him a question. Lou Heron, if I accidentally fell and had a miscarriage, would you be angry? I don't know, he replied curtly. Perhaps because everything had been perfectly resolved, his voice regaining that lazy tone. Anyway, I don't like kids, they're noisy and troublesome. Why are you asking that? I said slowly. No reason, just asking. I closed my eyes, feeling drowsy. Suddenly, he placed his hand on my slightly swollen belly, feeling the novel fetal movement under his palm. The man mused, if it's yours, it should be very well behaved. Actually, it's not well behaved at all. I tilted my head up to receive his kiss, but all the while, she was calculating how to get rid of the child and walk away unscathed. 9. I woke up late the next day. I had assumed Lou Heron had already gone to the airport. Instead, I heard him on the phone with a friend in the living room. His phone was on the dining table, on speaker. Shenlong is anything but obedient. Now that things are blowing up online again, and you're leaving the country at a time like this, Aren't you worried something might happen to your little girlfriend? I've got something to deal with over there. Keep an eye on her for 2 weeks for me, Lou Heron said carelessly, flicking ash from his cigarette. I just saw Shinlan yesterday. Her temper is still as foul as ever. She wants me to come back to her, but she refuses to swallow her pride, as if it were that easy. Chunyi said in a teasing tone, how am I supposed to keep an eye on you? Why not have Jiang Yu come stay at my place for 2 weeks? Didn't you want a kid in the first place just to force Shinlan back home for a marriage alliance? Now you've got what you wanted. Honestly, why don't you give me that little girlfriend of yours to raise? I've never played with someone so obedient and pure before. Sure, Lou Heron agreed lazily, his tone full of unmistakable flippancy. If you want her, go tell her yourself and see whether she'll let you touch her. Chunyi caught the certainty in his words and leaned back in his chair, sighing, I really envy you, having a little girlfriend like that who's so devoted to you. So do you really want to have this child? Or are you simply trying to make Shinlan back down? Lou Heron hooked up the corner of his lips, a rare hint of interest surfacing in his eyes. Whether to have it or not, let's talk about that later. First, let's see Shinlan's attitude. Chunyi asked curiously, everything you say is about Shinlan. Aren't you afraid your little girlfriend will be heartbroken? She might dump you and run off with someone else tomorrow. She won't. Lou Heron uttered those 3 words indifferently. Only I get bored and dump other people. When has there ever been a chance of her leaving me? Besides, she still wants to get A. And as he said this, Lou Heron seemed to remember something, his expression calm and confident as if victory were already in hand. Her acting is awful. Even if Shinlan makes a huge scene, she still won't leave. He wasn't saying that without reason. Jiang Yu's bad acting wasn't limited to acting itself. In her early years, the fondness in her eyes for him was impossible to hide. Even just a simple kiss made the skin on her neck flush pink with excitement, and she was so nervous she didn't dare open her eyes to look at him. Later, there was a time when she got drunk and leaned against his chest, tracing circles as she muttered something unconsciously. He leaned in to listen and just happened to catch that line of confession, laced with dependence. I really like you, Lou Heron. He was also heavily drunk at the time, and for a moment he couldn't make sense of the words in his head. He just took that faint, subtle flutter in his chest as the effects of alcohol. After a moment of stunned silence, a teasing, roguish smile appeared in his eyes. Like him, this was the first time anyone had ever told him they liked him so foolishly. 10. He was born into a wealthy family rife with open and covert power struggles, and with a face that most resembled his father's. He had seen far too many naked schemes. Even his mother couldn't be said to love him very much. Raising him to adulthood had been nothing more than a way to extort a hefty sum from his father. He understood early on that all flattery comes with an agenda. Just like those girls who clung to him, their mouths spoke sweet words, but their eyes were fixed on the limited edition bag in the display case. Later, he met Shinlan, who absolutely refused to enter into a marriage alliance with him. It was the first time he found something genuinely interesting. She was the first person he had ever encountered who refused to flatter or fawn over him. Later, keeping Jiang Yu was merely to provoke her, to see if she truly didn't care. Logically, a proper mistress shouldn't overstep, harboring unrealistic fantasies about her patron, but with Jiang Yu's feelings, he did not feel offended. This feeling of being loved with all one's heart, admired, and relied upon was not unpleasant. On the contrary, it was addictive. Love is a sword bestowed by heaven upon the one who is loved. You can wield that sword and become the knight who protects the other person, or you can easily drive it straight through their heart. Once you are certain of the other person's love for you, from then on, you have the right to toy with their feelings. Watch her tear out her heart and lungs for you, offering you everything. Jiang Yu was the first little girlfriend he had openly acknowledged. It was also the first time he had formed such an intimate relationship with someone, and he understood so clearly that he held the upper hand in it. So he naturally assumed that Jiang Yu would always revolve around him, that she would become anxious and insecure because of Shinlan's appearance, love him to the point of pain, love him to the point of despair. She would lose sleep over him and shed all her tears for him. Just saying those 3 words made one's fingertips tremble. He could hardly wait to see the look of pain and collapse on Jiang Yu's face after he chose Shinlan. He was so fixated on that scene that he didn't even realize it. He was waiting for Jiang Yu to love him. 11. The abortion went smoothly. It was nothing more than a matter of closing and opening one's eyes. The autumn wind swept up maple leaves and carried them to the window. I stared at them for a while, then suddenly reached out and touched my lower abdomen. Of course, I had also looked forward to this little life, awkwardly learning how to knit a sweater, but unfortunately, I never finished it. Now it was no longer needed either. All the anxiety, Anticipation and worry about the birth of a new life had vanished without a trace. Shenlong came to see me, still with that lofty, condescending air. Next month is the engagement banquet for Lu Heron and me. If Miss Jiang is unwilling to accept it, you can stay and make a scene, I said softly. No need. As for love, it wasn't that deep anyway. At 23, I was just in it for the novelty. I had already gained enough over these years. There was nothing left to make a fuss about. Just then, a message came in on WeChat. It was Lu Heron asking me why I had been admitted to the hospital. I didn't even blink and said, I've got a cold. Anyway, he had never once asked me where my hometown was. Once the WeChat account was changed and the phone card thrown away, from then on, if he wanted to find me again, it would be like searching for a needle in a haystack. 12. The first time Lu Heron didn't receive the goodnight message Jiang Yu said, he just assumed she was feeling unwell from her cold and didn't pay it any mind. But the next day, there was still none. There still wasn't any. By the third day, in the past, although she was busy filming, she would occasionally send him a couple of messages, telling him about interesting things that happened on set. He rarely tapped to listen. Most of the time, he just converted them to text and glanced at them, but now WeChat was unusually quiet. He suddenly felt a little unaccustomed to it. Autumn comes late in Florida. Some brands, through assistant Lin, asked him whether he wanted to buy Miss Jiang some fall clothes. He held his phone, leaned back in the chair, and gave a faint by rights, these minor matters didn't need to be run by him. Sure enough, the next second he heard Assistant Lin say respectfully, there are also some maternity and baby supplies. Should we send those over as well? He lifted his eyelids slightly. Outside the window were vast stretches of maple leaves, red laced with green, while the desolate autumn wind carried a chill as it swirled through the air. For once, he remembered Jiang Yu's due date. It was next spring. In fact, he didn't really care whether this child stayed or not. After all, it was just a tool. But when those little things about a tiny life gradually became clear and concrete, he inexplicably felt something different. That was his child. His Adam's apple bobbed slightly as he instructed, send it over. After a while, he picked up his phone and sent her a message, have her have someone lay down the carpet in the room. He wasn't actually a very considerate person, but then I remembered she loved walking around the house barefoot. I ended up sending a couple more messages. It's cold, put on more clothes. Until the fifth night, the chat window remained empty. She hadn't replied. This had never happened before. He rubbed his temples, feeling an inexplicable heaviness in his heart. Are you unhappy, or are you angry? When those two words were applied to Jiang Yu, they always felt somewhat unreal to him. After all, for the past 5 years, she had always been gentle and obedient. He had never thought he needed to explain anything to her. The prenatal checkup report was released at his behest, and the storm online was also of his making. He simply wanted to get the news to Shenlan's ears and see whether she truly did not care about the position of Mrs. Lu. Jiang Yu was someone who cared a great deal about online opinions. During that period, she hardly slept well at all. She always worked hard on set, but the results often fell short of expectations. Some people are just not cut out for acting. Is she upset because she found out about this? But those were only empty, delusional remarks. Was it really worth getting angry about? He never mentioned Shenlan in front of her, nor did he say anything about his engagement. Then what on earth is she making a fuss about? Assistant Lin's call came in at just the right time, his tone somewhat cautious. Mr. Lu, the autumn clothes and baby products have been delivered to Miss Zhang's doorstep, but no one answered when we rang the doorbell. That was normal. Jiang Yu had said she was going back to her hometown for 2 days, but it had almost been a week now. Hadn't she come back yet? I asked the security guards in the neighborhood, and they said Miss Jiang had also taken an injured cat with her the day she left. An injured cat. He sharply caught that point of information. Jiang Yu was very caring toward that cat. Even when she was traveling out of town for filming, she would specially hire someone to look after it at home. Occasionally, when he went to sleep at her place, the cat would insist on sleeping between them. How could this have caused an injury? He frowned slightly. The assistant was clearly aware of this too. The security guard said that 2 weeks ago, she accidentally fell from the balcony on the 12th floor. Luckily, she landed in the treetop and was rescued by someone. 2 weeks ago was exactly the day Shenlan returned to the country, seeming to sense something. Unease faintly rose in his heart. Pull up the surveillance footage and check what happened to that cat. 13. Shenlan had always done things without hiding a thing, so it was easy to find out what happened that day from the surveillance footage. After the plane landed in China in the early hours of the morning, Lou Heron called her directly. The man's tone was calm and unruffled, revealing no trace of emotion. "Come over, Mars Cafe, you have 10 minutes. After meeting, Shenlong directly threw her bag onto the table and admitted frankly, "Yes. I went. So what? I just wanted to see what kind of little thing could make you willingly support her for 5 years. I thought she must have some tricks up her sleeve, but it turns out she was scared out of her wits just seeing me return, not even daring to keep the child." Lou Heron sneered, his voice suddenly turning cold. "A little thing? Is that what you thought when you threw her cat off the 12th floor? It's just a cat. What does it matter if it died? Are you really going to turn against me over an outsider?" Hearing this, the man completely shed his usual air of casual indifference, radiating a ferocity she had never seen before. His eyes were icy cold as he sneered, word by word, "Shenlong, just who do you think you are?" Shenlong was stunned. This was the first time he had spoken to her like this. "Raising her naturally suits my wishes. Unlike you, since you can't have children yourself, you can't stand to see others have them." This remark struck a raw nerve. Shenlong abruptly clenched her palms and stood up defiantly. "Lou Heron, what kind of attitude is this? Don't take your anger out on me. If you hadn't tacitly allowed it, could those online storms have erupted? You used her as a pawn to force me back, and now you're pretending to be deeply devoted. Isn't the loss of the child exactly what you wanted? You just wanted to use the child to force me to yield. I merely cleared the way for you in advance." Cleared the way? Lou Heron sounded as if he had heard something utterly ridiculous. "Shenlong, you seem to have misunderstood a few things." His voice was not loud, yet every word dripped with sarcasm. "First, whether I want her or keep the child is my business. Who gave you the right to overstep and make decisions for me? Second, Shenlong, aren't you overestimating yourself? I merely found life a bit dull and wanted to force you back to see how you'd react, like teasing a dog for amusement. Did you really think you mattered that much?" Shenlong's face instantly turned pale. "What do you mean? It's nothing much. I just wanted to teach someone who doesn't know the rules a lesson." Lou Heron cut her off indifferently, dialed the number, and tossed the phone onto the table. The person on the other end respectfully called him young Master Lou. Old Master of the Lou family had, in secret, handed nearly all the core assets over to him. Now that he held such a distinguished position, there was naturally no need for a marriage alliance, and when he turned against someone, he could be extremely ruthless. The man's tone was calm, his eyes carrying mockery. "Miss Shenlong seems to have too much free time in the country. Terminate every collaboration she's currently negotiating. Spread the word. Anyone who helps her is making an enemy of me." Lou Heron, also, hasn't her father always wanted to rely on those few projects to make a comeback? Shut them down completely. I want the Shen family to disappear from the Beijing circles as if they never existed. There was no trace of doubt on the other end of the phone. "Understood, young Master Lou. I'll handle it right away." Shenlong seemed drained of all her strength and sank into the chair. All the color drained from her face, and her lips trembled as she was left speechless. Only now did she finally understand that there was never such a thing as a hopeless romantic in a wealthy family. All his passionate pursuit before had been nothing more than a pastime to kill boredom. Looking down at her disheveled state from above, Lou Heron asked casually, "Shenlong, have you remembered my rules?" 2 tears slipped from the corners of her eyes. Shenlong let out a self-mocking laugh, clenching her palm tightly. 14. Lou Heron had a little wine, not much, just to refresh himself. Not much had changed in the villa. The pair of fluffy slippers were still placed on the shelf in the entryway. The unfinished cat food remained in the corner nest. The chilly autumn wind seeped in through the slightly open window, and the long-haired carpet still hadn't been laid out, apart from the air being a bit quieter. Everything seemed just as it was the day he left. He didn't turn on the light and walked toward the sofa. As soon as he sat down, something small seemed to poke him from underneath. He frowned, reaching out to grope for a moment, his fingertips brushing against a soft sensation. Reaching in to pull it out, he discovered it was an unfinished knitted sweater, a warm, pale yellow color, with 2 small embroidered flowers decorating the collar. A slight buzz from the alcohol made his thoughts sluggish. Staring at it for a long while, he finally remembered, this was something Jiang Yu had knitted for their unborn baby. His fingertips unconsciously traced the delicate pattern. The sweater seemed to still carry a trace of her scent. He spoke almost instinctively, with his usual impatience. "Jiang Yu, put your things away properly. Leaving them here is uncomfortable." The sound rang out abruptly and loudly in the empty living room. There was no response, the air indoors was cold and silent. And the deep night beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows was vast and lonely. After quite a while, he slowly realized it. Jiang Yu was gone. She had already gone back to her hometown. He lay back down on the sofa and closed his eyes. His phone buzzed in his pocket. It was Qin Yi calling. The tone on the other end carried a hint of probing. I heard from Assistant Lin that you cut off all cooperation with Shenlong and halted the Shen family's project. Are you serious about this? Lu Heron didn't respond. Qin Yi changed the subject. By the way, have you found Jiang Yu yet? Lu Heron replied irritably. Who said I was looking for her? Qin Yi was taken aback for a moment, then went along with him and laughed. Hey, if you're not looking, you're not looking. I thought it was a big deal. Didn't Jiang Yu always go back to her hometown before? She'll probably come back crying to you again in a while. I don't care if she comes back or not. Lu Heron cut him off coldly and hung up the phone. Counting the time, that day when she said she had a cold, she was probably lying to him and having an abortion at the hospital. She's really gotten bold. He let out a mocking snort. An indescribable emotion surged up from his chest, but he couldn't find a place to vent it. His chest felt unbearably stifled, so he simply called Lin, the assistant, and gave him a good scolding. After hanging up, he thought again. It was only a child that hadn't even taken shape yet. The women who wanted to bear him children could line up from the east side of the city to the west. He grabbed the little sweater and tossed it into the trash without a trace of mercy. If she's leaving, then let her go. She'd better have some backbone and not come crying back to him like before. As for him, he had never gone back to old flames. 15. The Lu family's transfer of power went more smoothly than expected. On the day of the signing, the board members gathered around him, flattering him. He had secured power and become the heir everyone envied. There were plenty of girls eager to throw themselves at him. Wasn't it easy enough to find an obedient one? He took in a new young girl, named Jiang Nianyan. She was quite like her, blushing very easily. He placed her in the villa where Jiang Yu had lived before, not even changing the furniture arrangement. Days passed by like this, one day after another. His life remained as rich and colorful as ever, and his career was flourishing. He had the place Jiang Yu had previously starred and suppressed, and removed the advertising banners that had once been hung up for her, erasing every trace that belonged to her completely, out of sight, out of mind. Gradually, he rarely thought of Jiang Yu in the middle of the night anymore. The only time that thought surfaced was in the spring of the second year, when Qin Yi married into a wealthy family and posted a photo of a pregnant belly on his Moments feed. He lingered a few seconds longer. If Jiang Yu hadn't aborted that child back then by now, he should have a newborn little life. Of course, that thought lasted only a few seconds before he hatedly snuffed it out. Just a child. After all, as long as he wanted one, he could have one anytime. Just like back then, when he wanted Jiang Yu to have a child for him, he had only meant to tease her, but unexpectedly, she actually went along with it. Later, he put the same question to Jiang Nianyan, asking whether she wanted to have a child for him. A great burst of delight flared in the girl's eyes, and she coyly leaned into his arms and said, "Okay." A subtle restlessness and gloom rose in his heart. Inevitably, he compared Jiang Yu with her. Jiang Yu would not have agreed so quickly, nor would she have been this happy. The heaviness in his chest swelled like the tide, rising higher and higher. 16. Jiang Nianyan was indeed very obedient and well-behaved. She wore whatever he wanted her to wear and did whatever he wanted her to do, but Jiang Yu was not like that. She would occasionally throw a little tantrum. He took Jiang Nianyan to the same restaurant he had once gone to with Jiang Yu and ordered the same dishes. Jiang Nianyan would smile and say, "It's delicious," and the Jiang Yu of then would stick out her tongue and say, "It's a little fishy." Then she would secretly push the plate a little closer to him, asking him to help finish it. Jiang Yu would not treat the luxury items he gave her as treasures. Instead, she would only frown and complain to him softly, saying, "It's so heavy, it's not as practical as my canvas bag." Jiang Yu wouldn't put on an act of being sulky just to wait for him to coax her. Even if he didn't reply to her messages or went back on his word, she wouldn't get angry. She would only, the next time she saw him, ask for a hug with a grievance in her voice. He thought finding someone who resembled her could fill the void in his heart. But it wasn't until this moment that he realized he was wrong. What he missed wasn't that gentle, obedient face, but Jiang Yu herself. It was the Jiang Yu who would stay up late to make soup for him, the Jiang Yu who would only hide in his arms and cry when wronged, the Jiang Yu who would look into his eyes and seriously say she wanted to have a child with him, the Jiang Yu whose heart and eyes were completely filled with him. After going around in a big circle, he finally realized that all he wanted was a Jiang Yu who loved him, and so, He sent Jiang Yin away. 17. He would never take the initiative to look for Jiang Yu. That would be far too humiliating. Far too lowly, but if Jiang Yu was willing to come back to him on her own, he could accept her, he could keep her like he used to. But spring turned to autumn, and another year passed. Jiang Yu never called him once, never sent him a single message. His private phone number had always stayed the same. It was just so that if she ever came back, she could reach him. Chen Yi teased with a laugh. Who would have thought that our charming and romantic young Master Lu would also take a tumble over a woman? He scoffed softly and didn't respond, yet his long fingers unconsciously rubbed the edge of his phone. It's been almost a year, she's quite good at enduring it. If she wanted to be stubborn, then he would keep her company. Having seen the extravagant, decadent life by his side, he didn't believe she could truly settle down in her hometown, and just like that, another half-year passed. He attended an auction, where there was a very nice pair of wedding rings. He instinctively remembered that he seemed to have bought a ring for Jiang Yu before. 2. Women always feel that rings are symbols of loyalty and commitment, but to him, they were nothing more than another luxury item, something to buy to please people. Back then, the wife of a rival family had taken a liking to a ring. It was exquisitely crafted, and Jiang Yu seemed to have glanced at it a couple more times as well. Presumably, she liked it, so he kept raising the bid and snatched it up, then tossed the box into her arms. At that moment, her almond-shaped eyes widened slightly in pleasant surprise, sparkling as she looked at him. Perhaps it was the perfect night and gentle evening breeze at the time, or perhaps her emotional support was just right. In a rare good mood, he pulled her into his embrace. He kissed her while sliding the ring onto her finger. The size was a bit small, it couldn't be pushed all the way to the base of her finger, but it was still exceptionally beautiful. Do you like it? Her cheeks flushed red. I like it. 2 embedded red velvet boxes, yet only one of her rings was displayed inside. She probably thought one had fallen out when she opened the box just now and was about to look down to search for it when she heard him say, "I threw the other one away." Clearly, that one was the men's style. Her movements paused for a moment. He was not a very patient man. He rarely bothered to guess where a woman's complicated emotions came from, nor did he have the habit of explaining the reasons behind his actions. But she could always quickly compose herself. Just like back then, she obediently leaned in to kiss him, saying things like "thank you" later, because she needed to act in a play and the size no longer fit very well. She didn't wear it often, until one day he found this ring at the very bottom of the cabinet. There was also a postcard beside it. 18. He never allowed Jiang Yin to enter this bedroom, so the things here had never been moved. He remained silent for a long while, and in the end, decided to unfold it and keep reading. Lu Heron, I've been very happy these years by your side. I achieved my dream of acting, saw the scenery of many places, and lived a life completely different from the one I had before. It's just a pity that I wasn't very gifted at acting. I made you lose a lot of money, and in the end I still couldn't bring back even the smallest award for you to see. I really like Kyoto. It's always lively here, but I also often feel lonely. Kyoto has left me with only the bustling, dazzling lights of the night and you, but you have so many gatherings with friends, and when you get busy, you rarely come to see me. I know I rely on you too much. I'm afraid you'll get annoyed, so I try not to bother you. Otherwise, you'd definitely say I'm being delicate if you knew. I had the abortion after careful consideration. Don't blame me. Lu Heron, I just think a child without a father's care is pitiful. We all have to take responsibility for our choices. I miss home a lot, and I really want to settle down. My parents are old, and they can't do without me. Once I leave, I won't be coming back. You gave me so many things that I couldn't take them with me, so I left them all in the cabinet. Drinking all the time is bad for your health. I hope you can eat well and go to bed on time. I heard you're going to get engaged to Shenlong. It's too awkward for me to stay here, so I won't be joining. I wish you all your heart's desires. Happy wedding. Jiang Yu left behind. The edges of the postcard were crumpled from being pinched. Silently, his eyes reddened. After a long moment, he let out a self-mocking laugh. The lingering tenderness, like cold air, pressed in on his chest in thin, winding strands, leaving him breathless for a moment. What right did she have to make decisions for him? Had he said he didn't want the child anymore? Had he said he wanted to separate? The emotions that had been bottled up for over a year finally erupted completely, and this postcard brought them to a peak, he could no longer care about dignity or reason. He booked the earliest flight overnight to that river city he had never set foot in. 19. He thought that for someone with his power and influence, finding a person would be as easy as turning over his hand, but after all the searching, his assistant only managed to find a vague address. He wandered around an old residential area for several days but found no trace of her. Later, he heard that she had gone to teach in a volunteer program, so he went to various volunteer teaching sites in the neighboring city, asking at school after school. He used to always think that Jiang Yu couldn't live without him. He believed he could find her anytime he wanted, but now he realized that if she truly wanted to hide, he might not be able to find her even if he turned the entire city of Jiangqing upside down. He frequently traveled between the capital and Jiangqing, rushing back and forth just for a single piece of news about her. Even Chen Yi joked that he might as well settle down in Jiangqing. Another half a year passed like this. Assistant Lin finally found out that she was teaching at a primary school in a small town. By then, it was already winter. The cold wind whipped against the face, stinging like a knife's cut. At the elementary school gate, she wore a thick, pale yellow down jacket, her hair casually tied in a bun, with a touch of light makeup, looking very gentle and graceful. Her appearance was no different from before. The only difference was probably the young man standing beside her, with handsome features. He was saying something to her, making her laugh until her eyes crinkled. The wind blew between the two of them, and she sneezed. The young man then took her hand, rubbing and warming it in his. The intimate affection between the two of them was impossible to fake. He only felt as if his chest had been viciously stabbed by a knife. Searing pain, as if blood were streaming from the wound, spread from his chest. For a moment, he nearly lost control of his emotions and wanted to step forward to separate the two of them. But the next second, he saw the pair of gleaming rings on their clasped hands. The foot he was about to lift froze instantly. Assistant Lin asked softly from behind, "Mr. Liu, should we go over?" His throat tightened. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. For a moment, it just felt ridiculous. What would I do if I went over? Confront her about why she's been avoiding me? Ask her who that person beside her is, or tell her how much I've suffered these past 2 years, how pathetic I've been. Jiang Yu seemed to sense something and turned to look over. The moment their eyes met, a flicker of surprise passed through her almond-shaped eyes, but apart from that surprise, he couldn't find any other emotion in her eyes at all. She gently tugged at the sleeve of the young man beside her, whispered something, and then walked over. "Mr. Liu, what are you doing here?" At those words, the absurdity in his dark eyes nearly overflowed. "Mr. Liu." She actually called him Mr. Liu, such a distant, polite form of address seemed intent on drawing a line around the 5 intimate, inseparable years they had once shared. He found it utterly ridiculous. "Are you here on business?" she asked tentatively, giving him a dignified excuse. He curled the corners of his mouth, showing the faintest hint of a smile. "More or less, just passing by, so I thought I'd take a look." He did not dare say that he had been looking for her for more than a year, nor dare say that he had crossed mountains and rivers for this one meeting. He didn't even dare to say that he had cast aside all his pride and reason, and only wanted, humbly, for her to come back to his side. How could a young master of the Liu family, so far above everyone else, possibly admit to having ever harbored such thoughts? Jiang Yu did not expose his clumsy lie. She merely nodded and said, "It's windy here. If you don't have anything else to do, you should head back early." She wanted to drive him away. The wind made his eyes sting a little. He suppressed the bitter taste in his throat and said with a lofty, lightly mocking tone, "Since you're already here, won't you walk with me?" She froze slightly, looking troubled. "My husband is still waiting for me." The moment the word husband left her lips, all the emotions Liu Heron had been suppressing in his chest ignited at once. "So once you have a husband, you just stop caring about your former lover? Have you two even spent as much time together as we have in bed?" That was far too harsh. He saw the stunned redness around her eyes. The anger fizzled out halfway through, and he came to an awkward halt. A biting cold wind swept between the two of them. He suddenly wanted a cigarette, just to calm himself down, but that wouldn't be appropriate. His eyes reddened, and he drew a long, deep breath. "When did you get married?" 6 months ago. 6 months ago, that was exactly when he had gone to Jiangqing to find her, only to hear that she had gone to teach in a rural school. He suddenly felt a Belated, sharp pang of pain in his heart. Was it because, if he had swallowed his pride and gone to find her sooner, they wouldn't now have to speak through a stranger of a husband? He lowered his head in a self-mocking way, his gaze pausing for a moment as he stared fixedly at the ring on her hand. It was a plain band, and nothing about it suggested any real value, but it fit even better than the size he had given her before. Jiang Yu seemed to have seen through his thoughts and explained, "It's just a very ordinary ring." He let out a self-mocking laugh, but in the end said nothing. "If there's nothing else, Mr. Liu, I'll be going back now." Jiang Yu turned around and was just about to leave. Suddenly, she heard him ask again, "These past 2 years, have you been well?" She froze for a moment, then a sincere smile spread across her lips. "Very well." She didn't politely ask him in return whether he had been doing well. He simply said seriously, "I hope Mr. Liu is doing well too." On a winter day of swirling snow, this conversation, held after 2 years apart, finally came to an end here. She didn't even give him a chance to catch up. She then turned and left with the young man. The sky at the horizon was cold, dark, and overcast, and the snow lay thick on the ground. The children at the elementary school had almost all gone home. Only a little girl wearing a yellow sweater with small flowers lagged behind at the end. Her cheeks were red from the cold. When she spotted her parents, she quickened her steps in delight and threw herself into the arms of a middle-aged man. For a moment, Liu Heron felt dazed. If that child back then had not been aborted, would she also have been such a lovely little girl? Maybe she would have had eyes as gentle as Jiang Yu's, and when she smiled, the corners of her eyes would curve into a beautiful arc, or maybe she would have clung to him, asking him to build snowmen and have snowball fights with her, calling him daddy in a sweet voice. Unfortunately, life has no ifs. He relied on Jiang Yu's love and acted recklessly again and again, and he was destined to be tormented by belated regret for the rest of his life. The car slowly drove out of the city, his eyes red. He forcefully threw the ring he had bought at the auction out the car window. Back when he was studying abroad, his least favorite city was London, where the weather was always gloomy and stormy. Now, what he hated most was this nameless little city in the north. It was here that his just budding love was buried, along with the girl who had once loved him most, the half-finished little yellow sweater, the ill-fitting diamond ring, and the unborn child that belonged to them had all been buried in memory by the city's wind and snow. The sedan drove north all the way, listening to the wind and snow outside. He closed his eyes, tears rolled silently to the ground. From now on, he will never set foot in Jiangcheng again. End of full text. Completed.